Hello, 8th grade. Welcome to Soul Studies. Mr. A here again with Friday's lesson. What I'd like everybody to do is realize that all your assignments should have been submitted already. So Thursday, you had an assessment. I went over the whole copy and pasting issue. Not sure what's going on with some of our friends. Luckily, it's not been anybody in this class. I hope that after I take a look at the assessments, I can still feel the same way. There's no reason why anything should be copied and pasted. It's not like I haven't given you enough resources or breakdown in the units and moments in history. So we can't go deeper than we have for this course. What I'd like you to do is if you ever have any questions, reach out. Don't go ahead and just let me use any online resources. Let me just copy and paste from the book or the workbook. No, it must be in your own words and explain everything that you need to truthfully. What I like to do, and also 5 people got a 0, and some of those were on the test. So what I like to do is begin our new unit. So today's assignment is twofold. So we're going to begin with our new unit. Next chapter in our course textbook is chapter 25. It's a very, very interesting unit, pretty cool unit, Roaring 20s. And what I like to do is go very deeply into it, as we always do. So first of all, either typed, and if you type it, guys, please go ahead and name this, okay? Name the file. Make sure we can go ahead and see what this is. If you ever need to find it and it's just untitled or just your name, how are you going to find it? I'm not sure. If you plan to type it, remember you must break this into sections. Question, bullets, but have it into sections, because if you don't have it that way, you will notice on other posts you have not received full credit. What I'd like you to do is go ahead and write the topic, which is the Roaring 20s. And the decade will be from 1919 to 1929. So we're going to pick up right where we left off at the end of World War I. Remember, that just ended here. So the Roaring 20s essential question is as follows. How do the changes that occurred in the 1920s forever impact our nation? So if you prefer handwritten, guys, remember how it works, separate sheet with a straight edge. Or if you want the note sheet, I've attached them here. Feel free to print or use an extra one if you have it. But this is a new note section. All of the notes, all of the paper should be stapled. How do the changes that occurred in the 1920s forever impact our nation? Take a moment and jot that down. When you go ahead and open, you could feel free. If you have your textbook at home and you want to have it side by side while we complete this, that's something we've never done before because we don't always have our textbook in classroom, but you're welcome to have it side by side. If you'd like to do that, 718, okay? And the main idea for this section, okay, the section is titled Politics and Prosperity. The main idea is, as the Republican Party returned to power in the 1920s, the economy boomed. So, if you recall, the most recent president that we know of is Woodrow Wilson. Well, let's move forward right here. Who was President Harding on the left-hand side? Who was President Harding on the left-hand side? Well, Warren G. Harding is elected as the new United States president in 1921. World War I really helped the economy because of the amount of production. Remember, the war did not take place on American soil, so you don't have all the damages as many European nations had. But what you do have is an economy that has truly, truly expanded. Factories expanded at a very rapid pace because you needed all of these military supplies. In order to have these military supplies, you needed these factories to push them out. So all of a sudden, here is an economy that seems to be booming, production at a very rapid pace. We need more supplies for the war. Okay, so we're getting it and we're meeting those expectations for the most part. We're having this production at a very high number. The only problem here that we have, guys, is when the war ends, we're not going to need all those supplies. So the war was over, and we don't need all those supplies, number one. Number two, you have soldiers who are coming home who now need a job. They're looking either for their old job or a new job. So the war is over, these 2 million soldiers come home and look for a job. But at the same time, factories stopped turning out materials. So because they stopped turning out materials for the war, they don't need as many employees in their factories. What you do need to realize is this. You may have, if you're listening to the news, following along what's going on in the world, even though it's very chaotic and sometimes very upsetting to watch, you hear the word that's used, recession. It's an economic slump. Right now, hopefully you have seen, what's going on with our nation's economy. Those of you who have parents, grandparents, guardian, who have money invested in the stock market, or have just turned on TV and you see the arrows pointing down in red, you realize that this pandemic that we have going on has really impacted a lot, but has also impacted our nation's economy and a financial hardship on many people. Many people have not been working, and many people have not been paid, okay? And many people have used the word recession. It's an economic slump. And if you've heard the president speak, he has used that word before in recent days to say he wants to avoid that. That's where he doesn't want it to head in this direction. And he's referenced this time period here where you have all these supplies that are being just produced, and all of a sudden people don't need them anymore, and more people looking for jobs, and there you have an economic slump. And I want to highlight the words. See how I highlighted some words here? That's for you to greatly understand. So President Harding is in office here. And what you have happening, okay, what you have happening is this. Harding goes ahead and he fills his cabinet positions with his friends. So let's pretend that our friend Gabriella becomes president. So who's in her cabinet? She chooses some of her friends. She chooses Brianna. She chooses Maria Clara. She chooses Ariana. She chooses our great friend Methuselah. Choosing people, Kayla, choosing her friends. They're going to fill the cabinet with great friends. Does that mean those people are qualified? Well, not necessarily, okay? Because what they're doing is rewarding people a job. What Gabriella was doing there is rewarding people a job that haven't truly earned it based on merit. You may remember this, okay? You may remember this from previous presidents as well, who have given jobs to their supporters and old friends. Think of, Andrew Jackson from last year. You may remember that. Given to his supporters, his friends, saying, I promise you a job if you get me into office. Well, Harding fills his cabinet, the presidential cabinet, with old friends. This creates a scandal, okay? This creates a scandal, obviously, because these individuals aren't qualified for the position that they're given, okay? 1920, election, he's able to win this. He comes into office. Herbert Hoover, a name that you need to jot down here. He's going to be the new Secretary of Commerce. It's going to be the first of many times we hear his name. Okay, commerce, business, trade. He's going to play an important role in that. And what you have here is Harding, though, the current president, filling many cabinet positions with his old friends. They become known, you may want to jot this down, guys, as the Ohio Gang. Ohio Gang. Harding is an extremely dedicated, devoted American, a hard worker. The problem is, the Ohio Gang, his friends, are not like him for the most part. They see as, okay, we're going to get a job here. We're going to enrich ourselves. We're going to basically take advantage of these positions given. At the same time, let me give you an example. And if you want to turn to 719, the example is under corruption and scandal. Harding makes Charles Forbes the head of the Veterans Bureau. So Forbes is the head of the Veterans Bureau, someone who he had known for many years. But Forbes stole millions of dollars from the Bureau to profit for himself. So what happened there is Forbes is going ahead and taking money for himself, and that's, depleting that department where he's taking money, depleting. It's in a negative. So Harding looked as this to be a great betrayal. What happens here is more of this starts to come out. Okay, more of this scandal starts to come out. You have this individual who's president, who's rewarding jobs to his friends. But then what ends up happening in August of 1923, Harding has a heart attack. Many say this heart attack has a lot to do with the scandals and the amount of drama that was filling up and his concern of what he had just done by appointing these individuals. So here's a term that you really, really need to know. It's the Teapot Dome scandal. It's the Teapot Dome scandal. Okay. In the Teapot Dome scandal, the first cabinet official was sent to prison for being involved in an oil bribery. So being involved in an oil bribery. Here's what happens. Okay, here's what happens. Once Harding passes away, so anytime somebody passes away, if they're involved in something negative or positive, you usually start to hear a little bit more, even in the present day. So after Harding passed away, more scandals come up to the American public. And those who want to read more of it's on 719. This is the most serious scandal, though. You may want to highlight this, of Harding's presidency. The Secretary of the Interior, Albert Fall, is involved here. 2 oil executives bribed Fall with money. So basically, these 2 oil executives wanted government land to dig for oil. So what Albert Fall did is he secretly leased the land to these 2 executives. So they gave him money. The oil executives gave Albert Fall money. Okay? Albert Fall, again, is Secretary of Interior. Albert Fall takes the money, keeps his mouth shut, and lets him go ahead and dig for oil. He's the first cabinet member ever sent to prison. That's important to know. Once Harding passes away here, his vice president, you're going to want to make sure you have this, his vice president, Calvin Coolidge, becomes the new president. Calvin Coolidge becomes president, and he's not even, seeking the position of time, not even expecting it. He was at the time not even in the White House, okay? He was at his father's home in a farm in Vermont. His father's actually the one who informs him that he's going to be the new president. His father is a justice of the peace, so he's the one who actually swears in his son as president on this farm in Vermont. And Coolidge now takes a position that he never even tried for. Coolidge is known as a very, very silent president. I mentioned him before, so you may know these names, right? We focused on these individuals before, but now a little bit deeper. So this is really, really important. He's one of those individuals who would be at the event, at a gathering, and just absorb everything. And one of those people that would say little to nothing and just absorb a lot of information. Doesn't mean he wasn't smart. He was a brilliant individual. He just liked to listen, absorb, and we can learn a lot from our friends sometimes, right? If we sit and listen, we can learn a lot. Okay, so I'm going to have to minimize this so you see this correctly. So Coolidge, who is Calvin Coolidge, should be on the left-hand side. Who is Calvin Coolidge on the left-hand side, please? Coolidge says, right now, the White House looks pretty weak, okay, because of all these scandals, especially the Teapot Dome scandal. So he's afraid that the White House, especially the presidency and the presidential cabinet, is going to lose any type of respect it had among the people. So what Coolidge is going to do is he's going to cut regulations on businesses to make the country prosper. So he's going to cut some regulations for businesses. As a result, he's hoping that the industries will help the economy grow. So as a result of these regulations, there's a rapid economic growth. When you have that greater economic growth, all of a sudden you have more jobs again. And that was the goal, okay? Because at the end of World War I, when these men came back from service, they wanted their jobs. Women come back, they want their jobs. And all of a sudden, they didn't have any. So now you have more jobs, you have a greater income. And there's something that you might not know that happens here. Because anybody who's an adult who goes into their wallet may find cash, okay? At the same time, you may also have a card. You may find a card. And back in the day, okay, credit cards were not as common as they are now. Now it seems that a lot of people pay more with credit card or debit card than they do cash. So here's what happens. The credit card that we know of today, in a way, right, in its early stages, comes out there in the early 1920s. It's to encourage the buying of products. Business allowed installment buying on credit. For example, if you buy a refrigerator, let's say mom, dad, guardian buys a refrigerator, would they pay that in cash? Would they pay that in cash right now if you went to the store with them? Maybe, but most likely not. They most likely use a debit or credit card. That's because, let's say they go to Home Depot and buy the refrigerator, and they have a Home Depot credit card. This is now in 2020. And they have to pay, let's say, $120 a month. And there's interest, usually, certain percentage they have to pay for these installment buyings. And they pay $120 a month until the refrigerator is paid for. That's called buying on credit. And that begins under Coolidge's administration. The reason is he wants to encourage buying of products. Well, if you can't afford to buy the product in one payment there in cash, well, we now have what is called buying on credit, something many of us take for granted right now in 2020. 100 years ago, pretty interesting, is when it starts to come out, roughly. Okay, what is the impact on the stock market? What is the impact on the stock market? So as more people are buying products on credit, the stock market is increasing. So those arrows are pointing up and they're green, unlike on the television the past couple of days, right? So these arrows are going up. This is positive. More people are buying. When more people are buying, the stocks, for the most part, are soaring. So corporations sold stocks or a share of ownership to investors. So if you own a stock, right? You have stocks. Your parents, grandparents, guardian may have a stock. That means it's a share of ownership to the investors. Okay, the investors made or lost money, depending on whether the price of shares go up or down. You may know somebody right now who owns a share of ownership in a corporation, and possibly their prices are going down and their shares are not what they were before this whole pandemic. If you went ahead and you had stocks in any type of product or company that is producing something that a lot of people are, getting right now, I'm sure your stocks are soaring. But otherwise, for the most part, many individuals' investment stocks right now are on a decline. A period of increased stock trading or the rising of stock pricing is known as a bull market. Think of a bull that runs really fast, right? Increased stock trading or the rising of stock is known as a bull market. So go ahead and highlight stock market and bull market so you can understand. Let's not forget about Russia right now, okay? We have to put them in the back of our mind and not say, oh, they're done, they left World War I. Well, not yet, guys. You can't do that right now, because if you do that, you're going to miss a big part of history. So here's what we need to know. I'll minimize this again so you can see this clearly. So we have, here we go. Okay, so what we have here, ignore that one right now. Let's go back. So what you have here is the Soviet Union has what is called a communist government. The Soviet Union develops its communist government. Communism is an economic system in which all wealth and prosperity is owned by the community. Okay? Wealth, prosperity owned by the community. So it's a giant pool. So it's different, obviously, than the government that we have. Our economic system, okay, and wealth and prosperity is not owned by the community. Americans refuse to recognize this government that was started by an individual named Lenin. Some of you may be familiar with this individual, It's an important individual in history. Okay, Vladimir Lenin, he creates, and if anybody wants to take a look, 722 in the textbook. In the Soviet Union, Russia, Vladimir Lenin creates the world's first communist state. Okay? The U.S. doesn't want to recognize Lenin's government. Many Americans dislike communism. Okay? Many Americans were shocked when the Soviet government did away with private property. There's no private property, okay? And they're attacking religion. So there's no religious freedom. No religious freedom and no private property. What do you mean by private property? Well, where are you right now? Who owns your home? Who owns that property? If the answer is mom, dad, guardian, grandparent, okay, that means that's privately owned. They own that property. If you say, oh, it's a landlord and their name is whatever it may be, they own the property. That's private property. But what do we mean by freedom of religion? We should all know that based on the martyrs we've studied, right? So Soviet Union doesn't allow that. Congress votes $20 million in aid when a famine, Great Starvation, threatens Russia in 1921. America plays a crucial role by sending them $20 million in aid. Okay? It's said that the aid may have saved as many as 10 million Russians. 10 million, guys. Think about that for a moment. 10 million Russians from starvation. That's huge. So America's stepping in to, they're not agreeing with how the government is set up, but they want to help these people. Most Americans dislike communism. The build-up for arms, especially, with many different nations. You may think of Germany first. The arms race is a major cause of World War I. We're aware of that. So many Americans are in favor of Europe, of Germany disarming. So not having this big military buildup. Disarmament means reducing weapons in a nation. Okay, reducing weapons in a nation. And that would include the United States as well. That's a way to pursue peace. Pursue peace. The Kellogg-Briand Pact, okay, you may want to jot that down too if you take a look at 722. Kellogg-Briand Pact, United States and 61 other nations sign it to outlaw war. You remember, okay, that Woodrow Wilson wanted peace. Well, so did Harding and Coolidge. And in 1921, they're going to push for that world peace. And hopefully, they're hoping, this is going to bring that world peace into this new decade. What I would like you all to do is post the notes, okay? That's going to be for this section for today. What I'd like you to do now is also go ahead and take a look online. I'd like you to go ahead and complete the following. 8 vocabulary cards and workbook page 120, okay? Workbook page, have the 8 vocabulary cards, have them in the photo, or you could send the photos separately. Workbook page 120, guys, numbers 1 through 16. Have them as a full sentence. Like number 9, he was, or Harding was. Number 10, Mellon was. 11, Hoover was, or he was. Have them as a full sentence. Number 1, why did Democrats lose the White House in 1920? Democrats lost the White House in 1920 because it's very, very frustrating to have to take away points for that. But I want to keep everybody on target, keep learning, keep reflecting. This is a great moment in history, as are all these moments that we learned this year, because they all help us understand our nation at a better level and follow along so we don't fall behind. I promise you, hear this information again in the future. Let's understand it now, and you can roll with it in the years to come. Take care.